All right, we finally got some movement for Tennessee football in the transfer portal. Who is committed and who could be on the way, plus some recruiting nuggets from the class of 2024. That and a whole lot more at your Monday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Monday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. That is your team every single day. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Thanks so much for being here. And thanks to PrizePicks for being a part of the show today. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedon. Use that promo code LOCKEDON for a first deposit match up to $100. That is daily fantasy sports made easy. Got a whole lot to get into here today on a Monday. Don't forget the mailbag edition of the show. I'm trying not to say Twitter Tuesday anymore, but the mailbag edition of the show that is coming up tomorrow. So any questions you guys have, comments, concerns, @_Kaner and @Locked On Vols. As always, thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. So we got all that. Gonna cover two transfer portal commits that jumped in the boat on Friday evening. We had two episodes on Friday. The normal episode, we had one late in the evening about two players entering the transfer, or about Jalen Wright going to the NFL, Cooper Mays coming back, and then you had two commits on top of that. And I was like, I'm not doing three in one day. And then of course on Saturday you had two Tennessee players who were in the transfer portal commits to go to Ole Miss. So a lot happening this weekend. We're going to talk about some of those odds and ends in segment number 3. Plus, Chip Kelly had some really good comments on the state of college football. We're going to hear that here in just a moment in segment 3. But first, Holden Staes and then Jakobe Thomas coming up in segment number 2. Holden Staes, he was, it was kind of one of those first one, gets the prize situations for Tennessee in terms of the tight end position in the transfer portal. We heard of Holden Staes was the first name we kind of heard of. Actually, Justin Jolly of UConn was probably the first name we heard of. But Justin Jolly, Holden Staes, Jordan Dingle, Bauer Sharp. Those were just some of the tight ends that Tennessee spoke with, met with, visited with, and had a lot of interest from in the transfer portal. And I think Holden Staes, you never want to say there was a true pecking order. I mean, you kind of saw that. Jolly obviously wasn't in the pecking order. He was down there. Tennessee kept ties with him. Sharp, obviously, Tennessee severed ties with him as well. So when it came down to it, in terms of players in the transfer portal, it was ultimately Holden Staes and Jordan Dingle from Kentucky. Looks like Holden Staes, of course, made the announcement, made the pick for Tennessee on a Friday night. Tennessee was obviously hosting at the time Jordan Dingle of Kentucky, so that was a little interesting, and he cut his official visit a little bit short and pulled his name out of the transfer portal and announced that he was going back to Kentucky. So that's kind of how that went down. Volquest.com, go check out the full story in the video. Catch up with Holden Staes after he committed to Tennessee. He said this to Volquest: I'm going with Tennessee because they provide the best opportunity for me. I made great relationships with Coach Ablin, Coach Halsley, and Coach Heupel. Coach Ablin was the first coach to come up to South Bend and visit me once I put my name in the portal. That was a big thing for me, and the opportunity that they have there at the position. They have two guys leaving, and I'm expected to come in and lead the charge in that room and help the offense succeed and make plays happen for next year. I really felt good leaving the Tennessee visit, but I've had some great options that I had to check out. But I kind of left these visits in Washington and Georgia thinking the opportunity at Tennessee was too much to pass up. After I left Georgia with my parents, we talked it over. There were a lot of good things there, but what I could do for Tennessee and what they could offer me was too much to pass up. And again, he mentions right there, Washington was in this one, and then Georgia came in this one late. And when Georgia got in the running, I'm like, okay, well, that's going to complicate some things. Not like he can't pick Tennessee over Georgia, but I mean, Georgia's got a lot to offer. A lot of success. Again, just lost its first game in 2.5 years, right? College back-to-back national champions and all that. So anyway, there was a little bit of pause whenever Georgia kind of got into this running, but Holden Staes recognized that Tennessee was pretty much the first team that jumped out to him. He goes on to say here, quote, "It was highly anticipated," of telling Ablin of his commitment. I think they made it known from the jump that I was their guy. I visited there first, but then I had some other visits to make, so I kept him on his toes a little bit. Once I told him I had made the decision and felt confident about coming to Tennessee, he was so excited. He told me he was waiting on someone to put their trust in him because he is a young coach. I had a lot of coaches come up to me with impressive resumes, but he was looking for a tight end to put their trust in him, to coach him up and help us do some great things. He was really excited. I'm really excited to play for him and to get to know him the next couple of years. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. Staes has a couple years of eligibility. He's got at least 2 years of eligibility. He played 2 years at Notre Dame, and this is a really good give for Tennessee because obviously Ethan Davis was the only one on roster. You have Ethan Davis. Now you have Holden Staes. You have Emmanuel Koye who's on roster, but again, don't think that he's close to being ready to help. And Tennessee's still trying to get a prep commit at that tight end position. You had the flip from Tennessee to USF, obviously from what's his name? I'm forgetting his name right now, blanking on his name. But nonetheless, Tennessee's looking at Cole Harrison, who was on campus this past week. Tennessee's also got a couple of got another in-state option that they're looking at a little bit this week. Jonathan Eccles was his name. And so Tennessee's trying to sign a high school player in this class at the position. And, of course, you got Holden Staes. And if that goes well and you do get at least one from the high school level, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4 tight ends in the room for 2023. Still, the numbers aren't where you need them to be. You still would feel much better with one more, but in this era of the transfer portal and everybody trying to go get played and paid and trying to go play and all that, sometimes at that position, that's as good as it's going to get. So, huge get for Tennessee. Holden Staes. Ask about his relationship, what he knows about Ethan Davis. Said, hey, we're both from Atlanta, so we knew each other coming in. Got a lot of things in common. I think our games are similar. I think we'll be able to help each other a lot in terms of growth and able to push each other. I'm coming in as the other guy, so they have told me to continue to help him out when he steps on the field because I've been there and done that before. Just coming in, being a leader in that room, leading by example. So Tennessee gets its guy at tight end. That's huge. And I did think it was interesting, an assistant coach at Kentucky that has Tennessee rent-free in his brain all the time. Literally all the time. So Vince Morrow, of course, the assistant coach I'm talking about, he tweets after Jordan Dingle announces that he's taking his name out of the transfer portal and going back to Kentucky. Quote tweets that, does Vince Morrow, and says, now that he's staying, I will speak the truth. Jordan Dingle 21 told me Wednesday night he was staying, and don't let that school tell you anything different. They wanted him big time, period, end of story, go Big Blue. He literally said, don't let that school tell you anything different. I'm not one to really try to bash other coaches or other assistant coaches because you literally never know what might happen. They might end up at Tennessee and I have to form a relationship with them and cover that program. So always got to be very, very careful in that regard. But don't let that program literally is the definition of capital, all caps, LOL, sideways, laughing, crying face. That is such an embarrassing tweet. I mean, it's such an embarrassing tweet. And, I mean, he's right. Tennessee liked Jordan Dingle a lot. Tennessee wanted Jordan Dingle a lot. But as I'm sure Tennessee told Holden Staes, as I'm sure Tennessee told Jordan Dingle, hey, first one in's getting the spot. So if it happens when you're in your middle of your official visits, it just is what it is. And, I mean, Jordan Dingle didn't really help himself out an awful lot when he waited like a week to enter the transfer portal. So, anyway, I think Jordan Dingle would have been great in this offense. I do. But obviously he gets the news that Tennessee is going with Holden Staes, takes his name out of the portal. I mean, it all happened at the same time. So Vince Morrow, I mean, it's a really, really kind of an embarrassing tweet, but the definition of LOL, laughing, crying, sideway emoji face. All right, so Tennessee gets its transfer portal commit from the tight end position. What is next? What positions do they need to focus on? And what was the other big transfer portal edition of the weekend? All that and more is coming up next right here on Locked On Vols as we continue on here with a Monday show. Do you want to tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors? Passion, drive, patience, What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof rack, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money is back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Motors, eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available for U.S. customers. More on the other side here on Locked On Vols. All right, we welcome you back in here to Locked On Vols, your Monday edition of the show. Don't forget, mailbag edition of the show, that's coming up tomorrow. So let me know any questions, comments, concerns you have at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. Okay, so Tennessee reeled in another commit via the transfer portal. This was over the weekend. I believe it was on a Friday. Actually, maybe it was Saturday. I can't remember. I get the days kind of mixed up a little bit. But nonetheless, Jakobe Thomas from MTSU, all right, went to Tullahoma High School, so in-state kid, went to MTSU and entered the transfer portal, committed to Oregon State, and then just days later flipped to Tennessee. I mean, the era of college football, it is wild and it is wacky. So this is what he told VolQuest at the time of his commitment. Growing up in Tennessee, it was one of those things where you just bleed orange and white. It is an acquired culture. Out of high school, I wasn't really recruited by Tennessee, but Coach Heupel really changed the culture of football here. A couple years ago, Tennessee wasn't much of a winning program, but when he came in here and changed it around, I've always wanted to be here, so I had to put myself in a position where I could be here. As soon as I got the call from Coach Heupel, there was an immediate interest. I just had to make sure it was a great fit for me and let my childhood dreams not get in the way and cloud my decision. But Coach Banks and Coach Heupel have really treated me like a son. I feel like I'm home. Coach Heupel is a great coach and a great man, and they are on the verge of something great. I want to be a part of that. I want to be someone who can help this team make history. So, again, you can just tell that this is where he wanted to be, right? I mean, it's easy to see why. I mean, if you grow up in the state of Tennessee, you play football, East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, West Tennessee, whatever, and you've got orange and white everywhere. I mean, you can't escape it. And so you grow up a Tennessee fan. You don't maybe not get that opportunity out of high school, but now with the transfer portal, you can always have that opportunity to further your education, further your playing career somewhere else. And a lot of times that means coming back close to home. Now for him, he was at MTSU. It's not like coming back close to home. It's more like just going up a level, but still he had that opportunity. But he first committed to Oregon State just days ago in the transfer portal. What was up with that? He said, quote, to VolQuest, quote, "So the transfer portal was a weird thing. I talked to Tennessee last Monday. They told me they would get back to me. A lot of coaches at other schools have told me that and not gotten back to me. I was scared. I didn't want to get lost in there like some of the other guys do. When I committed to Oregon State, Coach Banks called me and said I told him I'm still here, and they didn't quit showing interest in me, so I couldn't turn down this opportunity." I mean, I get that. You don't want to get lost in the weeds, right? You want to make sure that someone's got a spot for you. How many times do we see players into the transfer portal and they truly see that the grass isn't always greener, or the pillow's not as cool on the other side, if you will? And he said, hey, I've seen so many situations and incidences of that. I didn't want to be a statistic. I wanted to make sure that I was taken care of. So, I mean, it sucks for Oregon State. I mean, it does, but it is what it is. He had to take care of and, do what he had to do. Ask about his memories of Tennessee. He said the Pruitt stage are the ones that jump out to him. Jared Garantano, Juwan Jennings, Josh Dobbs, and Georgia, the Hail Mary. Those are some of the key moments for me in middle school and high school. When I think back on Tennessee, those are some of the biggest moments. And, of course, again, he was, growing up right here in Tennessee and saw it all over the course of the last little bit. But really trying to be a good teammate, grow. He's got experience. He plays safety. He's going to have multiple years. So in 2022, he had a breakout season. He was an all-conference player for MTSU. In 2023, He was the second leading tackler for the Blue Raiders with 71 tackles. And now he's an experienced guy. And he's going to come into a fairly young group at safety. When you look at that room, we'll see what Wesley Walker decides to do. Again, he's still on the team. He's not into the transfer portal. He can't transfer again until he graduates, and he won't graduate until the spring. So that's a little caveat you got to remember here. He's already transferred once, that being Wesley Walker. If he wants to transfer again, he's got to do it as a graduate student, and he's not going to graduate until the spring. So anyway, Wesley Walker is still on this football team, and he's injured right now. He's not going to play the bowl game, but when we're trying to factor in and piece together what this group and what this team could look like, you got to put Wesley Walker's name in there for now. But you got Wesley Walker, who's a veteran. Andre Turrentine, who is now a veteran, but in terms of experience, still fairly young. He did get a lot towards the end of the season. Jordan Thomas, who can play the star position as well. Christian Charles, John Slaughter, Boo Carter coming in, Marcus Gorey coming in, and Idris Farouk coming in. That's kind of what the safety position looks like for Tennessee when we project to 2024. Now you add in a guy like Jakobe Thomas, and it's just going to be more experience, going to be more competition, and it's a guy you at least know has played an awful lot. Last thing he said to Volquez said, "I'm trying to get in there next week, get in on that orange and white. I'm ready to go now. The first thing I'm looking forward to is meeting my teammates and getting to know the guys I'm going to be grinding and sweating with. Watching practice, they've all have a great work ethic and they get after it. That is one of the most exciting things for me, and really seeing what Tennessee is like. I know it's going to be hard and tough, but I'm ready to push through and do what I do." And of course, you've got early enrollees that can get in and get a part of bowl practice. I mean, you had Mike Matthews and Boo Carter and some of these guys who were out there practicing with Tennessee this past weekend. Now you can have transfer portal commits do the same thing. It's just weird. I remember going and being in Miami last year and going and watching a practice or two for Tennessee before the Orange Bowl, and I saw McCallan Castles out there. And I mean, obviously you can't play, but you can practice and stuff. And so it's a weird era of college football, that is for sure. But Tennessee did get a commit from Jakobe Thomas, who was committed to Oregon State, flips to Tennessee after beginning his career at MTSU. All right, we've got some odds and ends. That's coming up next. What did Chip Kelly have to say about the state of college football? Tennessee players going elsewhere in the transfer portal, and a whole lot more. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. All right, we continue up here on a Monday edition of Locked On Vols. Don't forget, Twitter Tuesday, X Tuesday, Mailbag Show. That's on Tuesday. That's coming up tomorrow at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. That is when you guys get to take over the show and do with it what you will, right? We'll answer questions and all that. So really, really do appreciate you guys doing that. And go ahead and get in your questions. Okay, so in the final segment of this Monday show, I really just kind of wanted to do just some odds and ends. There's some different things I want to talk about. There's some different things that have gone on throughout this weekend. So you're seeing Tennessee players continue to enter the transfer portal. I mean, the count's up to 9, so I mean, nobody else has entered here lately. But you're seeing those players who were in the transfer portal committing to other schools. And you knew that was going to happen. I mean, don't get me wrong, but you're seeing a lot of these guys commit to other SEC programs. Now, Warren Burrell went to Georgia Tech. Mo Clipper went to Charlotte. Trying to think of some lower levels. But anyway, you had over the weekend, Danico Slaughter committed to Arkansas. And then you had 2 players commit to Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. Tyler Barron, which is going to be a real big addition for them, and Tamari McDonald, who I'm sure will play as well. Tamari McDonald and Tyler Barron both committed to Lane Kiffin on Saturday and to Ole Miss. And of course, in typical Lane Kiffin fashion, he tweeted out a picture of the Tennessee private jet when he was at TAC Air earlier that week. And I mean, that was obviously to see probably Barron and McDonald. So nonetheless, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss get better. I mean, Tyler Barron staying in the SEC. Tennessee doesn't play Ole Miss this year, so I mean that's good. It's not like this is gonna be like a storyline game or anything like that, but gonna be interesting for sure. He's an experienced SEC pass rusher, and when healthy and when bought in, he's dangerous. Tennessee would like to have him back for this year. Don't get me wrong, but again, kind of like what I talked about, it's like kind of like what price makes sense and all that type of stuff. Whenever you're trying to field a roster for 2024. So nonetheless, Tyler Barron is gone. Tamari McDonald, who I loved as a story, he was nothing but a reserve, nothing but a special teams player. And then he won the starting job at the star position out of camp in 2022. And in the spring of 2022, when Tennessee had all these injuries across the defensive backfield, he was getting reps over and over and over. He was getting tons of reps, and he took advantage of that. And so he won that job. When they went out and got Wesley Walker to play that position, he won that job and didn't give it up. And he was a starter for Tennessee in 2022. He was a starter for Tennessee in 2023. Of course, he battled a whole lot of injuries in 2023, which is unfortunate. But I always like T-Mac. I wish these guys the best of luck. I mean, I don't wish anything but luck upon these guys. It's just kind of weird in this era of football when you see guys play at Tennessee for 4 years and then transfer to another SEC program to finish off their collegiate career. It's just different. But hey, that's the era we're in, and Tennessee will gladly take other players and other deflections from elsewhere around the conference for sure. So that happened on Saturday, kind of back-to-back. Nico Slaughter commits to Arkansas. I'm hearing that Addison Nichols has a whole lot of interest in Arkansas as well. Arkansas, I'm hearing they like the fact that he's got tape at both center and guard. I'm not sure what tape they're looking at because he never played center in a football game unless you have practice tape. And sometimes players do get practice tape, not all the time, but sometimes guys do get practice tape. And I think that I think Sam Pittman is really interested in Addison Nichols' ability to play multiple positions on the interior. So that'd be a really good spot for him. I mean, in terms of will Sam Pittman be the coach in 2025? I don't know. But being coached up by an offensive lineman who's your head football coach, for a guy like Addison Nichols, I think that's probably a good thing. So we'll continue to track that. Of course, 9 Tennessee players in the transfer portal right now, 6 of which going from the defensive backfield. Of those 6 DBs, 4 of which are from the cornerback position. So we'll continue to track that as the week goes on. I do want to play this audio clip, all right? Saw this audio clip. Thought it was really, really cool. I want you guys to hear it. This is Chip Kelly. Obviously, Chip Kelly, longtime Oregon coach, former head coach at the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of success. He's been at UCLA for quite some time now. This is from Jay Truss's Twitter account, KTVB. It's a Tegna affiliate. And this is what he had to say. This is a clip from Chip Kelly from a UCLA press conference. And was asked about the status of college football. What's wrong with it? How do you fix it? All that and more. Give this a listen. Some good stuff here. Chip Kelly on the state of college football and how to fix it.
I think they're all a problem, and I think we need to have a conference commissioner. I think football should be separate from the other sports. Just the fact that our school is leaving to go to the Big Ten in football, our softball team should be playing Arizona in softball. Our basketball team should be playing Arizona in basketball. But because football left, and they're saying, well, how do you do that? Well, Notre Dame's independent in football, and they're in a conference and everything else. I think we should all be independent in football. And you can have a 64-team conference that's in the Power 5, and you can have a 64-team conference in the Group of 5. And we separate it, and we play each other. You can have the West Coast teams, and then every year we play 7 games against the West Coast teams, and then we play the East. So we play Syracuse, Boston College, Pitt, West Virginia, Virginia. Then the next year you play against the South while you still play your 7 teams. You can play a 7-game schedule. You can play 4 against another division opponent, and you can always play against one Mountain West team every year so that we can still keep those rivalries going. Not that I've really thought about this. Not that I've a lot of spent of time on this. But I think if you went together collectively as a group and said there's 132 teams and we all share the same TV contract, so that the Mountain West doesn't have one and the Sun Belt doesn't have another and SEC has one and they have another, that we all go together. That's a lot of games, and there's a lot of people in the TV world that would go through it. You can sponsor each one. Instead of calling it Group of 5 and Power 5, you can call it Amazon, Nike, bid that out to things. You can do a lot of different things. But I think if we still do the same thing and take all that money, and I would do this, and I think this needs to be done, that money now needs to be shared with the student athletes, and there needs to be revenue sharing, and the players should get paid, and you can get rid of NLI, and the schools should be paying the players because the players are what the product is. And the fact that they don't get paid is really the biggest travesty. Not that I've thought about it.
Not that he's thought about it whatsoever. That was a lot of good stuff there from Chip Kelly. Now, sorry, hold on. Oh, you guys can't hear that because I stopped sharing the screen. Anyway, a lot of good stuff there from Chip Kelly. A lot of things I agree with. I I certainly believe that college football should be its own entity. I thought that for a long time. I think at some point, that will happen. But the problem is right now you just started all these new TV contracts. SEC on ESPN and ABC. You've got the Big Ten now with CBS. Conference expansion that is just now starting. Pac-12 is decimated. You got the tons of the Pac-12 teams like UCLA going to the Big Ten and all that. You've got a bunch of the Group of Fives coming up and taking part in the Big 12. And so my point is all this reshuffling really is kind of taking shape right now. So how quickly could we see college football break off from the pack? I mean, are we talking 5 years? Are we talking 10 years? Are we talking 15 years? What's the landscape look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. Name, image, and likeness is here. It's not going anywhere. We can talk about putting guardrails on that and all that type of stuff, but the fact of the matter is you're not going to win in court. We can talk about trying. I mean, I think the biggest issue here is just the windows on when you can go in, when you can't. I mean, again, we talk about it all the time. The month of December is just so difficult. So my point is, I don't think name, image, and likeness is going anywhere. But what Chip Kelly says, you need to make athletes employees of the school, and they should get paid for it, because if not for them, none of this would be possible. I agree with all that. I just think that it's really, really challenging to do that, because again, name, image, likeness has still got to be a factor in that. Because if you are, I mean, is everybody getting paid the same? Caleb Williams is not going to get paid the same as your backup punter. You know what I'm saying? So if you had a fair and even wage for everybody, and then you had name, image, likeness tacked on top of that for everybody to prosper off their own name, image, likeness, maybe that's a thing. I don't know. I do think college football will eventually break away. I just don't know when that's going to happen. All college football teams being under one TV contract, I don't think that will ever happen. That will never happen. UCLA will never, ever pull the ratings that any team in the SEC will, not named Vanderbilt. It's just not going to happen. It's nice to think that in terms of everybody being on one TV contract, but that right there will never, ever happen. So again, there was a lot to unpack there. I mean, he spoke for about 3 minutes or really about 2 minutes, and a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, his Notre Dame example, Notre Dame is a member of the ACC, but not in football. It's independence. Why in the world is UCLA not playing softball in Southern California? You know what I'm saying? Like, why is UCLA traveling to Wisconsin and Rutgers and all these other teams in the Big Ten in March to play softball and baseball? It makes no sense. So I don't know, just something to think about. We can unpack that as the week goes on if you want to, and we can talk about what we would do if we were college football commissioners and all that. But I thought that was a little interesting there from Chip Kelly, head coach of UCLA, the Bruins. All right, fun Monday show. Can't thank you enough for being here, guys, for tuning in and giving me your time. It never goes unappreciated. Subscribe to Locked On Vols on the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We're already past 10,100, so we're moving in the right direction, right? We'll get to 20,000 here before long. Probably not in the next year, but wouldn't that be cool? Can't thank you enough for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Don't forget, mailbag edition of the show. That is tomorrow. Any questions, comments, concerns, all that and more right here on Locked On Vols. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, everybody.